Hi everybody, Michael here. Today's video I want to discuss why are so many men committing suicide these days and also give a solution to the problem. Let's go. Okay, so I wanted to do this video because one of the reasons I set up this channel is because it is the way of the Logos, and through the Logos all things are possible and you can overcome anything. So if you are suffering any form of depression or suicide, get professional help first and foremost, but this video is to give you a spiritual idea on things that may help you. Now, recently, just in my personal life, not anybody I know, but like friends of friends have saying things like, "Oh yeah, the neighbour's kid committed suicide," and I've known of a 15-year-old who committed suicide, a 22-year-old who committed suicide. There was a grown man who committed suicide at his job. He was doing an office job and he committed suicide on the job just before Christmas. And you even have loads of celebrities. Ricky Hatton was another one who committed suicide, and this is a trend, and there's multiple reasons why. First and foremost is because we as a society and the age we're living in, we are completely spiritually blind, and our peace and harmony comes through the spirits. But because we have no spiritual understanding in these times, there is a lot of darkness in the world, and a lot of people feel an emptiness within, which is disconnection from the spirit. And number two, we are living in incredibly difficult times. The state of the world, the financial system, the whole system, the politicians, it's all completely messed up. So people are struggling financially, and that causes a lot of stress on people. And essentially, a lot of young people or people can feel like they're basically just slaves to a system. They're living just to go to work, to pay rent and survive, and there's no quality of life. And there's two reasons why people would commit suicide. One is through spiritual depression. And I believe depression is partly mental health, but mostly spiritual health. So for an example, somebody like Ricky Hatton, he had loads of money. He was extremely rich. So he wouldn't have committed suicide due to financial problems because he was fine. He didn't have to worry about paying the mortgage or being homeless and all those problems. So unfortunately, he committed suicide because he had an inner darkness, mental health problems, which are really spiritual problems. So with someone like Ricky Hatton, they need to go and get professional mental health problems assistance, but also I would advise he look within and work towards the spirit through the Logos, because depression is an inner darkness. And because if you live by the ego, essentially life is completely pointless. In 100 years, 1,000 years, we'll all be dead. So what's the point of life? We're all just wasting our time. Now that is false, because there is more to this life than just the ego. And we are literally spirits. And we are made in the image of God, who is spirit. And once you realize that, you're born again of the spirit. You overcome your flesh. You gain eternal life because your spirit is eternal. And then that inner darkness disappears and is replaced by the inner light. And once you discover that inner light, it will dissolve the darkness, and the depression should disappear. And just from a personal point of view, I never really suffered depression when I was younger, but there was always a kind of, when you start getting to adulthood, you think, oh, hold on, we're all going to be dead. What's the point of life? And it's kind of a darkness feeling, almost like you're wasting your time. But when I was truly born, I had incredibly difficult things. So I know why people can do what they do. And going through extremely difficult times causes you to seek something more. That's what happened in my case. And now that I am born again of the spirit, this was 15 years ago, it's like impossible to be depressed. It's what the Buddha talked about. He said, it's the end of suffering. So you can still have sadness, but you will not suffer. So for an example, if somebody I know and loved died, I'd be sad, but I wouldn't suffer. And I wouldn't suffer because I have an eternal perspective. So it's natural to be sad, but it's not natural to suffer, because you have a spiritual perspective. If you have a spiritual perspective, you understand that there's a plan and that everything's going to be fine. And you're at peace. As Christ said, peace I leave with you. But if you're only living by the ego, you're going to be depressed. Oh, why did that happen? And you suffer because you mentally torment yourself rather than retreating into the spirit of peace. You'll be mentally tortured by the darkness. And the second reason why people are depressed is obviously if they don't have internal problems, it's external problems. So living in these times, if somebody loses their job and they can't pay their mortgage and they've got health problems and they're in pain and they basically just feel life's pointless. And, their wife divorces them. They can't get access to their kids. They feel like my external situation is so bad, there's no hope. I'm just going to end the pain. So that would be the second reason. So not an inner depression, but an outer circumstance. And in many cases, the first one is a lot easier to solve. It's a lot easier to tell someone to fast and meditate for a month or two and clean up their body, stop taking alcohol and drugs if you're on them, and cleanse your life, and the Spirit will come in and heal you. It's easier to do that than it is for somebody who's £20,000 in debt and they haven't got a job and they've got all sorts of problems. Right, and now with all that being said, I'm going to talk about solutions. Now, as I said, I would advise men especially to speak to somebody, preferably a health expert, a mental health expert, but also to look into spirituality and go on a spiritual path. Because as I said, through the Spirit, all things will be solved in your life. And if you have the inner problems, the inner depression, that will disappear once you awaken to the Spirit and the light within, and the lightness will overcome the darkness within yourself, and you'll be fine. And if you have external troubles, what will happen is if you do the spiritual work within and you awaken the light within, the Logos within, through the Logos, it will help you solve your external problems. This is what happened to me when I was 25. Once I was born again of the Spirit, the Logos, the Christ, all of a sudden, I ended my suffering, and then all the external problems I had in the world, they were slowly solved because the light within helped me overcome them. It shed a light on my problems and showed me how to overcome it. And it doesn't happen like overnight. It almost took best part of a decade for me to really get to a point where I was pretty happy with where I was at. But you don't worry too much. You live in the present. God dwells, the Spirit dwells in the present moment. So I live by the present and I do my best every day, rather than worrying, oh my God, it's going to take me years to overcome my problems. And then you just get more depressed and more miserable. But with the light of the Logos within, you'll live in the present, and then day by day, you'll get better and better and better. And it's a threefold way to solve your problems. We are mind, body, and spirit. So for the mind, you go and see a psychologist. For the body, we are basically a chemical factory. And if you do things right, you'll feel good. If you do things wrong, you'll feel bad. So you'll realize that you need to stop drinking so much. If you've got trying to drink to quell your problems, that's not going to help. If you're doing drugs, that's not going to help. If you're sitting around watching porn all day, that's not going to help, because you're losing your essence and your vitality. So once you clean your life up, you fast, you eat healthy, you give up all your bad habits, then your body will come alive. It'll be vibrant rather than beaten down. And then you have the spirit. So you have the mind, the body, and then the spirit. The spirit is just awakening the spirit within. And you do that by fasting, by meditating in silence every day, and having a spiritual advisor. And essentially, from a spiritual point of view, you live the way of the Logos. It's living by the Spirit rather than by the flesh. If you live by the Spirit, everything will work out fine. And the interesting thing is, when people commit suicide, it's because they can't deal with the pain of the ego. But instead of committing suicide, what you need to do is be born again of the Spirit. And once you're born again of the Spirit, now the ego doesn't die, but it's replaced by the Spirit. And then you don't feel like you need to commit suicide because you've been born again as a spirit. Now, some people confuse it because some people say you have an ego death, but the ego never dies until you leave the body. The ego and the mind are obviously still there, but as the saying goes, the mind is a good servant, but a terrible master. So if you're a slave to your thoughts and a slave to the mind, it's going to torture you. But when you're born again of the Spirit, you gain that peace and you become the master over your mind, and your thoughts won't torment you. And this is one of the keys of meditation. When I had my difficult times and I was just sitting around all day, feeling sorry for myself, going through all my problems, like moaning about all my problems in my head. And then I realized, hold on, if I just sit in silence, once I started meditating, instead of attaching emotions to my thoughts, I just sit in silence and observe the thoughts instead. And then I realized, hold on, I can control my thoughts. And if I stop thinking about it, if I sit in silence, I retreat into the peace of the Spirit rather than just allowing my thoughts to torture me. And then through that process, when I was sitting in complete stillness, I'd have moments of absolute peace within. And then I realized from there that I could become the master of my thoughts. And that's what I advise people to do. That's how we overcome our problems, with the power and the spirit of the Logos, or the way of the Logos. So that's what I wanted to do this video for, because I've been hearing a lot of these stories recently. And one of the reasons I've set up my YouTube channels is to help people. That's the main goal of these channels. And if you need more information, my personal channel, The Way of the Logos, that's the name of it. This is The Way of the Logos UK, specifically UK. But there's a playlist on my channel about mental health, depression, suicide. And I'll put a link to that in the description below. If you want to know more, go and check out those videos, because that will help you. And if you want to stay in contact with this sort of information, because this channel is dedicated to serving the British people with the power of the Spirit through the Logos to the loving Father. Subscribe for more. If you like the video, like it, share it with as many people as you can, and especially anybody who's depressed, especially about the state of the UK. So don't give up, be born again of the Spirit, and come and join Team Logos, Team Christ, Team God. And God bless everybody today. Goodbye.